Yet show me that you're still with me. Give me hope. Well, I went back in yesterday, Don, for what they call a nurse visit.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Rachel, who's a registered nurse, she took off all my bandages. I said, okay, tell me exactly what you see. And she said, it looks good. I said, what would you estimate the size of the wound to be? She says, well, I would guess it's 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters and only 1 millimeter deep. In just 3 or 4 days, it had made great improvement. And dear Jesus, I give you thanks and I give you praise. And I say, don't let me down now. Don't walk away from me now. I need you. My toe needs you. My life needs you. Because, Don, if that toe became infected, I could go through what I went through on September 5th in the year 2024. The evening where I almost died of septic shock. And if it had not been for Luke, I would have died. So Luke, if you hear this someday, I still think about that. And I'm still very proud of you for that. I'm very thankful for you for that. And I always will be. Always. Without question. So I took my meeting Friday as a little bit of an encouragement from Jesus Christ that it's okay, Michael. Don't panic. I'm still with you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to lead you through this wilderness, and I'm going to take you to the promised land. And dear brother, please do. But judgmentalism we were talking about. Would you please turn to the book of Matthew? Quite a few pages back. Oh, I'm getting closer. I'm in Mark now. Matthew. I would like you to turn to Matthew 7. These are the words of Jesus Christ. This will not be the first time I have read these words to you. I have read these words to you on a regular basis, and I will continue to, because these are some of the more important words and passages and verses in the Bible. Jesus speaking, Matthew 7, verse 1. It's just what the Apostle Paul was talking about in Romans 14 and 2 Corinthians 10. It's the same concept. Judge not, that you be not judged. Condemn not, that you be not condemned. Destroy not, so that you are not destroyed. He says in verse 2, for with what judgment you judge, the manner in which you use to approach other people and to think about other people and to deal with other people, and with what measure that you meet or that you pour out upon them, it shall be measured to you again. Translating that, Jesus is saying, I'm going to judge you by the same standard by which you have used to judge others. He says in verse 3, why do you behold the mote That means like a speck of dust or a little bit of sawdust you might think of. Why do you behold the speck of sawdust that is in your brother's eye, but you do not consider that the beam, and that actually refers to a giant construction timber. Like think about like 4 by 6 inches. So it's like having a log stuck in your face. Why don't you consider that log that is in your own eye? Or how will you say to your brother, let me pull out the speck that is out of your own eye, and behold, a log is in your own eye? You hypocrite. And some of these churches of which I have spoken, and folks, and I'll be very honest with you, there are some churches of which I was once a member that with time I have come to conclude they were factories of judgmentalism and self-righteousness. I'm not leaving me out of all of this mess. I've gone through this garbage myself. And thankfully I am now extricated from all of that through the mercy and the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. But otherwise, I too could have been a part of that. You hypocrite, verse 5. First cast out that log, that beam, out of your own eye, and then you shall see clearly to cast out the speck of dust out of your brother's eye. The words of Jesus Christ. You going to argue with that? If you do, you're arguing with your future judge. And again, he's the one before whom you will stand on your so-called judgment day. You can't escape taxes, you cannot escape death, and you cannot escape this inevitable future evaluation. You ever think about that, Don?
Not a whole lot.
Should you think about it more?
Probably should.
Probably should. I know it's a tough one. It's like, oh. Well, maybe we should say oh less and just start listening a little better. These church groups which detest me, they detest me. Now, I'm not telling you which groups right now. If you've been paying attention for the last few messages, you probably would have a pretty good guess. Because ever so often I'll mention their names. But these church groups, they love to talk about love and peace and hope. However, at the core of their cultish beliefs, and yes, I say they are a cult. I say they are a cult because they are not following the words of Jesus Christ, but rather they are following the ideas and the precepts, the words, the ideas, the beliefs of a human being or of a set of human beings. At the core, they are arrogant, they are filled with pomposity, sanctimoniousness, judgmentalism, self-righteousness, Those are some of the same things I've said about Gary. A sense of superiority. I'm better than you because I go to my little box that has its little steeple up on top. My box is better than your box. And they exist, they live in a broth and in a cauldron of contempt and hatred and vindictiveness. And I'm mainly talking about the people who think they're the leaders of those groups. They are not filled with love and joy and mercy and graciousness, but rather they teach the idea of superiority. We are better than the rest of them. We know more than the rest of them. And they lie, and they lie, and they lie, and they lie over and over again. At its base and core, these cult followers and their cult leaders reflect the same philosophy as the Pharisees of which we read in the Bible. In their attitudes and approach to other people, they are no different today than the Pharisees of old. Let's see what the Bible says about them. If you would, turn to Matthew 23. This is not the first time I have referred to Matthew 23. I refer to it quite often, and I think about it quite often. And when I think about these religious snobs and their feelings of superiority and their desire to judge and condemn others, I often think about Matthew 23. It says in verse 1, "Then spoke Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat." He's saying, okay, they are the modern day rendition of what Moses started way back during his life. "All therefore whatsoever they do, they bid you to observe, that observe and do. But do not after their works, for they say and they do not." Pretty good definition of hypocrisy. "For they love to bind heavy burdens, and grievous to be borne, and they lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers." Verse 5, "But all their works they do to be seen of men." And that's what the religions of this world, that's what they do on a regular basis. They do things to create the aura that they are special to God. God loves us because we belong to this particular box, and our box is blessed, including our steeple. He says they make broad their phylacteries, so like a Boy Scout merit badge. They wanted everybody to see how many merit badges they had earned. They enlarged the borders of their garments to make them more flowing, and maybe more different colors, more special. They loved to sit, verse 6, in the uppermost room at the feast, and the chief seats in the churches or the synagogues, and greetings in the marketplace, and to be called of men Rabbi, Rabbi, which meant teacher. Sort of what some people use the word pastor or reverend. And though they say it with such, oh, Brother Smith or Reverend Jones. But be not you called Rabbi, for only one is your master, even Christ, and all of you are simply brothers and sisters. And call no man your father upon the earth. So that's exactly what a major worldwide religion does. They call their church leaders Father. Have they never read Matthew 23, verse 9? Call no man your father. For only one is your Father, and he is in heaven. Verse 10, neither be you called masters, for only one is your master, even Christ. I don't even like to be called Mr. Garrett, because the word Mr. is a modern version of the word master. When people call me Mr. Garrett, I just say, no, my name is Michael. That's the name on my birth certificate. My name on my birth certificate is not Mr., it is Michael. Don, down at the Wound Center, I have most of them trained now.
Ah.
And they'll start to say, Mr. Garrett, no, Michael. They'll correct themselves. I go, good, you're learning. And then it says in verse 11, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Verse 12, for whosoever shall exalt himself shall be brought down low, shall be abased. And he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Boy, that would really tip the tea cart. Because when those ecclesiastical types get up to the top of the heap, they want you to recognize who they are. I remember hearing stories about Jimmy Swaggart, Don.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy's no longer with us, breathing. That somebody who knew something of that organization said that if you were on their little campus and you saw Jimmy or his wife, you were not supposed to speak to them unless they spoke to you first. Otherwise, you had to sort of back up, give them room, and let them move through like a king and a queen. Do you know who that reminds me of, Don? And don't say any names.
Why?
Because I just don't want to.
Okay.
It reminds me of an organization of which I once belonged, where I was told, don't say anything to him, he was the big chief, unless he were someday to say something to you. And then other professors and teachers, I was told, don't disturb them, don't say hi to them, unless they stop and say something to you. It's like I was just a peon. I was like 19 at the time. I meant nothing. I had no status. But I was not supposed to bother them. It's common among just so many churches. And at this point in my life, Don, I call it all hooey. Now, I don't know exactly what hooey is, but I've learned with time I don't want to step into it. Just hooey. I'm not even sure how to spell that word. But again, I don't want to step into it. It's going to be messy. Verse number 13. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, and then he nails them with the word hypocrites. For you devour widows' houses. Oh yeah, you'll take that property when the old lady dies. Maybe her son or her daughter needs a place to live, but no, you want to scoop it up for yourself because you're greedy. You want to take what she's got and make it yours because you think you deserve it. And for a pretense you make long prayers. Therefore, when you have your judgment day, you shall receive the greater damnation or judgment or condemnation. Verse 15, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees. And then he nails them again. Hypocrites. For you, we read that, that's verse 14. Verse 15, for you compass sea and land to make one proselyte, one follower. And when he is made a new member of your church, you actually make him a twofold more the child of Gehenna fire than yourself. Gehenna fire is the final death. It's not suffering forever. It's being thrown into the lake of fire. It's the final execution. Truly bad people are not going to suffer for all eternity. Truly bad people, at the end of all of their opportunities, will simply be exterminated, never to be heard from again. Think of the idea of throwing somebody into a volcano. Would a person feel the pain of going into a volcano, Don?
Maybe for a short time from the heat.
I don't think...
Once they hit, they're gone.
Yeah, once they hit that molten lava, it's over. It's like being in an airplane. The idea of knowing that your plane is going down would be frightening, but when you actually hit the ground, it's just poof. You know, many of those passengers that were on some of those airplanes that struck the World Trade Center, all they found were bits and pieces of them. They were just instantly shredded, just disintegrated. They didn't have time to suffer other than the fear of knowing that they were going to die a short time before they actually did. But these people, these proselytes, some of these outfits, Don, have missionary work. You've heard that word before?
Yeah.
Going to send out missions. And this missionary work. And Jesus is telling them, you bend over backwards to bring in more people into your church. And when you do, the poor people who get sucked into what you're doing, they are in much more danger than they were before. That's what Jesus thinks of churches or Churchianity. Don, Jesus might even wear the hat I'm wearing. They lie, and they lie, and they lie.
And deceive, and deceive, and deceive.
Over and over.
Like Satan.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
He says in verse 16, "Woe unto you, you blind guides." And how would you like to be walking along the rim of the Grand Canyon and the guy that's leading you is blind?
Huh.
There's a very good chance that you're going to go, whoop, whoop, thump. You blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is the debtor. Well, verse 17 uses that word fools and blind. Verse 19 talks about you fools and blind. He didn't have much good to say about these people, Don.
No.
And the Pharisees that we're reading about, of which Jesus directly spoke, can be found today, the same type of people, in Churchianity, in the so-called churches of this world, false churches, who believe in false doctrines, who are led by false pastors. And again, for some people, me saying that will be almost impossible for you to understand. You might not even have the equipment to grasp what I'm actually saying. However, I'm reading to you from the Bible. Don't get angry with me. Maybe get angry with the church that has been misleading you for all of your life and taking your money all of your life and screwing up your brain for all of your life. I'm trying to locate myself here. Let's go down to verse 23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. He calls them that again. He just keeps pounding on them, time after time after time after verse after verse. I don't know if the word scoundrel existed back at the time of Jesus, but if it did, he might well have said, you scoundrels, you scallywags. I'm not sure what a scallywag is now, but I don't want to be one. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and yet you have omitted the weightier matters of the law. Judgment, good judgment, pure judgment, mercy. Don, if I were a songwriter, I would be compelled to write a beautiful song about mercy. You know, the Gaither Vocal Band did a song one time entitled So Mercy. Beautiful song. I suggest all of you to look it up on your computer and listen to it. Gaither Vocal Band, the song is entitled So Mercy. S-O-W, mercy. These false churches, these hypocritical, self-righteous jerks, they have very little mercy for people who don't belong to their little tribe, who gather in their little box with their little steeple, and faith. He said, these ought you should have done and not leave the other undone. He said, it was right for you to pay tithes, but you missed the biggest part of the target. Judgment, mercy, faith. goodness, love, compassion, understanding, being willing to build people up instead of tearing them down. I think about some of the things that Gary communicated to me, Don. They were hateful. His comments were hateful. And yet, in his little spiritual ivory tower, he thinks he's being holy. Did I say something about some people not knowing their ass from a hole in the ground, Don? We come back to that. He says in verse 24, once again, you blind guides, which strain at a gnat. Now, a gnat was technically unclean meat. But they would make a big show about straining out a gnat, just a little bitty bug. And yet he says, and yet you turn around and you swallow a camel. A camel being unclean meat by the biblical definition. Most people don't know anything about that. But trust me, according to the Bible, you're not supposed to eat a camel. Don, you cannot get a camel steak this evening. You're supposed to do it.
How about a camel cigarette?
It'd be better for you than eating a camel. He says in verse 25, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. He says it again. How many times has he just slammed them over and over? First, clean first that which is within the cup and the platter, the plate, that the outside of them may also be clean. Verse 27, woe. Okay, I get the feeling I skipped something. Let's go back to verse 25. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within your heart and your mind, you are full of excess and extortion. Terrible, evil motivation. Your motives are not pure. Verse 26 again, you blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and the platter, the plate, that the outside of them may also be clean. Verse 27, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whited sepulchres. Think tombs. Tombs made on the outside with marble, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness, rotting flesh, disintegrating bone. Verse 28, even so you are outwardly appear righteous unto men. Remember the verse we talked about last week in 2 Timothy 3:5? I think that's the one. Having a form of godliness, having an appearance of godliness, having a way about you that some people would think as holy. And yet you deny the power of God Almighty in Jesus Christ and the Word of God. You denied the Word of God too. All along misleading the people with your lies, and your lies over and over. He said in verse 28, even so you are also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous. And you say, well, if we had been in that day of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you be witnesses unto yourselves that you, the people like you, people who have your mentality, people who have been deceived, have the same mentality. You are the children of them which have killed the prophets. And if you were back in that day, Jesus is saying, you would have been those that would have done it also. You serpents. Now, serpent in the Bible is often related to what, Don?
Devil.
Yeah. Satanic being, devil, Satan. You serpents, you generation of vipers. Again, another a poisonous snake. How can you escape the damnation of Gehenna fire? That's the second death. He's saying, Jesus is even saying, I don't know how you people are going to make it. And Don, I hate to say this, but it may come to pass that some of the people who have been extremely mean-spirited towards me, I mean, desperately mean-spirited, cruel, their minds may be so warped and they may be so absorbed into their self-righteousness that they never change.
They sound like some politicians.
Well, I'm thinking more of people in the ecclesiastical world. So-called church leaders and church members who, as Paul said, think more highly of themselves than they should. Some of these people, when they're even given another chance, they may not be able to change. Which means they will doom themselves to the lake of fire. Now, there are some people I don't want that to happen to, for various reasons. But I'm telling you, their attitude is so rotten. What did they say? Full of hypocrisy, full of iniquity, full of ugliness, full of the mind of Satan. And again, they think they're holy. They think they're pure. They think they're righteous. And they are the workmen and the workwomen of Satan the devil in this modern age. And they don't have a little demonic worship store. They are alive and well in their little boxes with their little steeples. That's where they actually live. That's where they operate. That's where they do their damage. And that might be the very reason that someday they are simply extinguished from existence. Where was I? Let's see. Where was I? Oh, how can you escape the damnation of Gehenna fire? That's what the word hell there means. It means the final death. Verse 34, therefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you shall kill and crucify, and some of them you shall scourge in your churches, and you shall persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood which has been shed on the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel and to the blood of Zacharias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar, different martyrs for God Almighty and Jesus Christ. Verily I say unto you, all these things, these punishments, shall come upon this generation. What generation is he talking about? It's true that of the people he spoke of right then, somewhere in the 30s A.D., in 69 and 70 A.D., the Roman army, I believe under Titus, came and destroyed Jerusalem, and many of these people were slaughtered, died a horrible death. That's the many fulfillment of the prophecy. The big fulfillment of the prophecy is yet to come. To the people of this earth, here in this age. Again, is it 5 years away from now? 10 years? 15 years? 20 years? I don't know. But I know we're a whole lot closer now than when I first heard the truth of God back in 1966. We're a whole lot closer. And then Jesus said in verse 7, one of the more empathetic verses in the Bible, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you have killed the prophets, you have stoned them which are sent unto you. How often I would have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her chickens under her wings, and you simply would not listen to me." And some more people are going to have to suffer because of their obstinance and their self-righteousness and their sense of superiority. And that's what I see in so many of these church groups, especially among the leaders. Not so much among the just mom and pop, just people who sit in a pew, but the people who want to be seen and want to get puffed up and want everyone to notice them, the people who become very proud of their station and their importance, their status. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, you shall not see me henceforth, till you shall say, Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. He's saying, you people are not going to see me until I return a second time. And when I come the second time to take over the throne of God, then you will know that I was the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, your judge and your master. And then you will say, Blessed are those that come in the name of the Lord. But think about all of the troubles they're going to have to go through. And if they weren't so stubborn and obstinate and self-righteous, they could have avoided all of that. Well, people of today are the same way. Now, how many people will hear this video? Not that many. But they can never say, Dear Jesus, I didn't know your truth. And he will be able to say, well, it was available if you had truly searched for it, but you didn't want to know it because you thought you were right. You thought when you were playing church that you had everything in line. And you didn't have a clue what you were doing. Your leaders didn't have a clue. They lied to you, and you simply ate the lies with continual concentration on the lies. Well, if you would turn to John 8. This vindictiveness which you find in people, especially religious people. Don, if you were to go down into a big city and find some poor soul that's on drugs or alcohol, and let's say you were dressed in, you weren't dressed in a fancy suit, you were just dressed in a very common way, maybe dressed like I am right now. Wouldn't that be a shock? Well, do you think that drunk or that wino is going to bother you?
Probably not.
No, they don't care. They don't care. But people who get all highfalutin, a phrase that I sometimes use, I used it one time with Gary, and oddly enough, I heard a member of his family repeat it back to me. And I thought, well, that's odd. I never used that phrase with the other person. I said, Gary, you need to get off your high horse. You need to get off your platform. Well, here in John 9, I've told the story so many times. We've gone over it. I don't think I have time to go over every word. But a woman was taken in adultery. Now, my question is, how did the Pharisees know that she was in the act? They said the very act. How did they know she was in there committing adultery?
Peeping Tommies.
They were either peeping through the window, or one of their members was the one with whom she was doing her thing. So they were directly involved in the whole incident. It was a setup. But anyway, they drag her before Jesus. They're scaring the death out of her. They want Jesus to commend or commence the stoning of her to death. And Jesus says, where does he say this? Verse 7. He says this to the Pharisees and to this mob. He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. When people get all filled up with a sense of righteous indignation, they forget all of the sins they have committed. But they want to point out a flaw in another person. I go back again down to the great religious philosopher Michael Jackson. Look at the man in the mirror. Until you worry about it, instead of worrying about everybody else and their supposed flaws, look at yourself the way Jesus Christ might well look at you. If you do, you will realize you don't have the right to want to condemn anybody to death, because you are just as guilty in one way or another. Maybe you weren't having sex with an unmarried woman, or maybe she was a prostitute. I don't know what her background was. But you have had sex with your neighbor's wife. And that's what I think we find out here. Jesus starts writing on the ground. Most likely, the names of those people wanting to stone her to death and the sexual partners they have had. And then when they saw it, one by one, they all skedaddle. They think, oh, time for me to get out of here. Because if you're going to stone her to death, Don, for adultery, then the bastard too should be stoned to death. If that's the game you're going to play. Well, all of a sudden they're gone. And Jesus said very simply, verse 10, "Woman, where are your accusers? Has no man condemned you?" And she said, "No, no man, Lord." And Jesus said unto her, "Neither do I condemn you." But then he adds these 5 words, "Go and sin no more." He didn't totally excuse her behavior, but he didn't chastise her and humiliate her. Don, do you think that she was humiliated enough?
Oh, yeah.
She probably barely had anything on. Maybe she was totally naked. She's dragged out of her house, out into the street, thrown down like a piece of garbage. She knew that what she was doing wasn't proper, but who knows? Maybe she needed the money to feed her children. I don't know. And they wanted to just make an example of her, and they wanted to trip up Jesus. All of this, they didn't care about that woman. They just wanted to put Jesus in a tough spot. But after they're all gone, "Woman, where are your accusers?" Well, they're all gone. And he says, "I don't condemn you." Think about that, Don. The creator of the universe, the maker of human life, said to her, "I don't condemn you." But what do people do all the time? They presume that they have the right, and especially if you hang out in these false churches, this Churchianity, especially if you hang out there and you're filled with pomposity and self-righteousness and judgmentalism and a sense of superiority, you love to condemn other people. And it goes back to that saying we've talked about so many times. You point one finger at another person, 3 fingers are pointing back. Jesus' only comment was, "Go and sin no more." And he said it with calmness and a sense of graciousness and a sense of mercy. But that's not how these religious hypocrites of modern Churchianity, that is not how they act. They act just the opposite. They act like the mob that wanted to stone the woman to death. Well, someday their sins will be fully exposed on that future judgment day that Paul talked about. Romans 14, 2 Corinthians 5. And if you would, turn in chapter 8 to verse 44. Let me look around here. Verse 44. He says, "Why do you not understand my words? Because you cannot hear my word." Verse 44. John 8:44. You need to remember this one. "You are of your father the devil, and you are of the lusts." And my margin says desires. We hear the word lust, we think it means sexual. Lust is a much bigger word. If you see your neighbor with a fancy car and you wish that you could have it, you are lusting after their car. If you look at somebody's job and realize that they're making more money than you, and you wish that that were you in that job, you are in a type lusting after their job. But he says, you are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning. He abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks it of his own. He makes up his own story. For he is a liar and the father of it. He lies and he lies and he lies. Don, I think near the end of this message, I can make a conclusion that the leaders of the churches of this modern churchianity, they do not represent Jesus Christ, but rather they represent their father, Satan the devil. That's what Jesus said. The Pharisees of old are just like some of these church groups and church leaders of today. They are full of hypocrisy, pomposity, contempt, hatred, a sense of superiority. Oh, we're members of this church. In the eyes of Jesus Christ, you mean nothing to him, except you are replicating the ways of your spiritual father, Satan the devil. Now, folks, those are the words of Jesus Christ. Those of you who are very comfortable in your self-righteous and judgmental churches, you better wake up before the hammer comes down on you. Because the hammer is coming. I just don't know when. But it will come. And your false church will be obliterated. And your false minister will be killed. And your false religion will be stamped out under the feet of Jesus Christ himself. You have time to wake up. But will you? Are you more worried about what your friends are going to say to you? Are you more worried about what your family members are going to say about you? Or do you have the guts and the courage to say, I dedicate and commit my life to Jesus Christ, and I will do his will, and I will follow his word, and I will be a part of his plan? And if you do, you will live for all eternity. And if you don't, you're going to be ground up into dust. Well, folks, I need to end this. Not a very cheerful ending, but it's the truth, whether you like it or not. And again, I'll quote Charlie Kirk. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You can't do it, because I'm speaking from the Bible. So again, until next week, I say goodbye to all of you. Goodbye, my friends.